Additional sanctions by the U.S., growing regional, not just European and American condemnation, and still it would seem that the Syrian government is intent on continuing to use military force to crack down on what it is calling terrorist armed groups, despite the fact that Turkey is saying that there are some positive indications that the Syrian government intends on implementing real reforms. The Turkish ambassador to Syria traveled to the restive city of Hama and said that while life was not quite returning to normal, he did say that the Syrian tanks had withdrawn from the city. Now, an activist from Hama who we spoke to said that that largely was in fact the case, but he said that the Syrian military continued to conduct mass arrests and had now positioned its tanks around the city poised and ready to go in. He also said that there was a sweep taking place in the farmlands around Hama, saying that Syrian security forces were looking for activists who were basing themselves there, and if they were not at the location, Syrian security forces were quite simply detaining anyone who happened to be there. And we still have this ongoing military crackdown taking place in Deir ez-Zor to the east, what seems to be a military buildup once again in Idlib province, with hundreds of arrests reported by Syrian activist groups taking place in various villages there. And in Homs, over a dozen people have been killed, according to the local coordination committees of Syria. All of this despite the fact that there are intensified efforts to try to put increasing pressure on the Syrian government. But it is a government that continues to appear to remain defiant, one that is fighting for its very existence. Never in the 40 years that the Assad family has been in power has its position been threatened to such a degree, and it has focused its efforts in the last 4 decades on building up the very institutions that would allow for it to remain in power. And it most certainly seems as if the government is relying on those institutions, on the fact that it still has a very close regional ally in Iran, and on the fact that the military and the business community in Syria have yet to stand against the regime. It most certainly seems as if this government plans on continuing to use brute force to stay in power whilst making promises, though it yet has to implement varied reforms. Arwa Damon, CNN, Beirut.